Well, hey there. Welcome to Standard Operating Procedure, the Intellify live broadcast, where every week I give you tips, tricks, techniques, and tactics to love a career in telecoms. So today we're going to continue with our project tracker. We've been working on this for the last several episodes, and we're just about to the point where it's useful and fully functional. Last week, let's check the notes. We're working on completion status by who the responsible engineer was for each of those sites. And today I'll probably spend a little more time on that. But I think the real thing today we're going to do is work on the area chart, and we're going to forecast the date the project should complete. Okay, we're going to forecast based upon all the work that's been done so far in the project. We're going to use that to tell us when's it going to be completed. All right, so let's share that workbook. Oh, we always do the whole screen, so let's do that. And, well, there's kind of the thing we're working on now. I'm going to back up to the dashboard. So here's more or less where we were last week. I got to make this a little smaller so that I can see if you leave me a chat message while we're talking here. And I'll make that a little bigger. Mario, welcome back. I should ask you, Mario, how is this going? You've been kind enough to join me for several episodes, many episodes even. And I would like to know, have you been trying out these techniques on your own workbooks, your own reports, your own dashboards? How's that working out for you? You can leave something in the comments. You can send me a DM, send me an email. Just want to know. It helps me to know that I'm being helpful. All right, let's go back to the workbook here. So here's kind of where we were last week. And I'm starting to think that last week, index match was a lot of what I showed you in the last episode. Index match is two functions that basically duplicate the functionality of the Excel's intrinsic lookup functions, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, XLOOKUP now. But there's a limitation with lookup that the first column of the array is always the lookup column, and it has to be sorted. And that might not be the way that data makes the most sense. If you've got an array that has more than one column having unique values, index match is a more flexible way to derive values, to look up, essentially. Index match is a more flexible way to do lookups inside that array. So last week when I showed you index match, you can see it there. It's not very clear, but I think I chose a bad example to explain to you index match, because it really just, I mean, you can use it, but it complicates this workbook. It's much simpler to take advantage of the way the workbook is set up, and you just simply look. I see a text message there, a chat. Okay, well, please reach out if you'd like some help with those. Curious to see what you're working on, and very happy to help you be successful with what you're doing. As you know, I've told you many times that I think for telecoms, Excel is a very fundamental tool, a very basic tool. It's like a hammer for a carpenter. It's like a wrench for a plumber. And being proficient with a basic tool is really necessary. It's essential to be successful. So that's why I'm here every Sunday, helping people try to become proficient with Excel for telecoms. Okay, so what I just said about this was, although I showed you index match, what it's depending upon is over here in responsible to complete. And so here's really what we're doing. We're looking up our values here. But the way the workbook is laid out, that is always the most recent. Here we're doing it by week. So the most recent date will always be the first cell of this column. Always. If you add new data, remember this itself is just a link back here to the config. And one of the first things we do with the config is get a little more space here. Here we derive, there's the most recent date embedded in our data. It's just a max function. Here's our updates, and we do that max function to pull out the most recent date. And all the other dates that we use, I'm going to say waterfall, they just follow along from that date. So there's that date, and then we create based upon that. See, date used is actually this one. So these are all the dates going back in time from the most recent date. So that means this will always be the latest date in the data. And over here, it's a direct link. It's a direct link. So this column will always be in reverse order or descending order. There's the latest date, there's the week before that, and the week before that. It's always going to be true. So now we don't need much of a formula at all here. We don't need to be complicated on our dashboard how we access that, because that is always going to be the most recent completion percentage available for ABEL. And that will always be the most recent completion percentage for Mario. So over here, we don't really have to do anything very clever I don't have to do index match. I could just link to it directly. And the values will not change. So I just wanted to show you index match, and I realized that, yeah, that was a good way. It was an exercise in index match, but it's really unnecessary. And we could do the same thing with these. I can fill those with formatting directly. See, nothing changed. And now it's just a simple link to these cells here. Nothing complicated. Index match is still good to know, but I'm pretty much a fan of doing the easiest thing, right? If I can do what I want, which is automation and update, make sure I have the latest updates. If I can do all that with two choices, and one is really easy and one is more complicated, I'll tend to follow the easier path, take the easier choice. Okay, so that's our completion percentage, and you see it's stacking up. It's improving over time. I could add, let's go back to updates, and yeah, I don't have any updates here, but let's do this. I could just remove some data. Why did it paste those? Oh, it did. I just have this column so wide you can't see it. There we go. So I'm going to take away, this is most of the last week or more. And very briefly on the dashboard, we're at week 4 of 2019. So, so many subtleties here. I can refresh all my pivot tables. And so you can see there's how the dashboard looks, the latest week, and here are the values. right? Now, if I update, let's say I add these values and then refresh my pivot tables, you see now this has changed, but these didn't change because I didn't refresh the pivot tables. This changed because it's just a max function that drives all our dates. So as soon as I add a later date, max automatically detects that, and all the formulas that do the dates will adjust automatically. But over here, these are derived from pivot tables, so have to update the pivot table to get those to change. And now we've incremented here. We've added 2 weeks to the tracker. Okay. This is really straightforward. This is just an area chart which shows for each responsible engineer how much they've completed. And this is as a percentage of the project, right? It's not their own, it's just the project. Is that what I want to do? Yeah. If I click here, you can see the series. I know it's really hard to read because it's small. There we go. But the series is just the dashboard, the same workbook, E8 through E17. There's the dates highlighted. And the blue one is Russell, and it's just this column. So all this chart is doing right here is charting these values. So again, I've given you the example of like sitting on a train and looking out the window, and the countryside goes by the train, but you just look through the window and the countryside changes, but all you see is the countryside that's right in the window. And that's what's happening with the data. Because if I were to move this, oops. Too far out. Since this is just linked, it's really easy to see. This is this whole table. And the part that's highlighted there, that's the window in the train. And the numbers are just going by. As new data gets added, I'm always looking at this part of this is my window, and the project completion is the data that's going by in this train I'm talking about. So this is always charting the view in the window, which is just this right up here. So it's really easy to do. The simple way to do it is select your chart type, and you don't even have to highlight data. You can. Let's do it again. I'm going to have a problem doing this though, because for reasons I don't understand, I can't do this kind of chart anymore. Let me try. Let's insert a chart, and I want an area chart. And then I would click select the data. So here's my data, right? So I'm going to come here and add, and I'm going to add Abel, and then I'm going to do that data. And then here's my horizontal axis. And I need to add another one. That's going to be Mario. And now I add another one. And here's a trick that you can do. It'll save you a very small amount of time. I'm not sure it's worth it, but now, since I defined the horizontal axis for Abel, if I don't define that again for each series, by default, Excel will use the first one, the one that is defined. So I could just keep adding now. and they'll all just be fine. They'll use that column of dates. There we go. But see, this isn't quite right. See the axis? This one shows the total of, all of these added up. And this isn't that kind of chart. But when I go and try and change the chart type, see, I don't have area as an option. And see, there's no area as an option. And I don't know why that is. I think it's because I use a Mac, an Apple computer, and this happens to me every day in my job. I see that these are really basic techniques, what we're doing here. I'm not, bending Excel out of shape to get it to do this. I'm using basic techniques that certainly work on Windows, but they don't work on Apple because Microsoft, so many of the Microsoft Office products, here's Excel, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, they don't work the way they're supposed to on Apple computers. A more accurate way to say that is the implementation of Office software on Apple is broken. So on your computer, you're probably using Windows. This is a special type of area chart where all the different series add up. And on I can't do that. It's not a choice that's available to me. Chart design. See, look at all the different, they're all the same. I mean, they're different specific kind of layouts, but it's the same basic chart. See if I can see something else here. But I've looked at this before. It's hard. I know it's hard for you to see, but the vertical axis is always the same. It never shows this cumulative percentage of, 54 is how much the project is done now. And I just can't pick that. It's very frustrating. But that's the technique for defining your chart is just create a chart, insert the chart type you want, and then do select data. And then you can just define very precisely what you want. And as you see, I didn't define the dates for all of my series, just the first one. And that should work fine. And you can see here that I have, here it is right out of the box. I have formatted a little bit. I like to make my labels blue. That just kind of pleases me. I tend to make them a little larger. Yeah, 10, just to make them a little more legible. That's 10 and blue. Also here, because it's narrow, I've go to the format and go to your format pane. Nope, it's back here. Labels. I've skipped every other month, every other date. So instead of every month being shown, every week being shown, it's just every other week. It just looks a little easier. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about today, any questions about that? Any questions about the chart? Go ahead and put it in the chat. And while you're typing that, let's look at my notes. Okay. We're going to forecast the project completion. So here we have how much of the project is completed so far, right? This is just going to, as people do the work, this column will just add up week by week. So I want to know if today 52.4% is completed, when will I be done? when will that get to 100%? And yeah, here, let's look at this. So on this worksheet, this is the task weight worksheet. We set this up very early in one of the first episodes about the project tracker. You can see what we've got here. Here's those dates again, the week numbers in descending order. And by week, here's how much we've completed each week. And then this is a sum. It just adds it up. It just adds it up. That's all it's doing. Yeah. And I can use this. I think this is a simple enough case that I can use this same worksheet. You may remember that usually I advocate do one thing on each worksheet so that basically so that you don't confuse yourself. Okay. It just makes it simpler. It gives you room to make some notes, make some scribbles, and one thing per worksheet is simpler. But this is also pretty simple. And as you can see, we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 worksheets. And with these type of automated dashboards, this is the project tracker with any of my dashboards, even my models. Sometimes to get that automation, you need a lot of pivot tables, and sometimes you have to make a lot of worksheets. So I think this is an okay compromise to do this on an existing worksheet. And what we need to do is really just a little bit of math. Basically, what we want to do is we're going to do compare two equations side by side. And it's this. The percent complete today is proportional to the number of days worked so far, and 100% completion will be proportional to the total days worked. So we can just stack them up, right? Just take the first one and divide it by the second one. This is basic math. I'm not going to teach you math, but I want to solve for total days worked. And to do that, I would divide the first equation by the second equation, right? That gives me this one equals that one equals that one. And then I'll multiply both sides by total days worked and divide both sides by, and multiply both sides by 100%, right? So I get, on this side, I get total days worked. I also divide by today's completion. So it's really like, it's hard to show in Excel. You have this equals this, and now I'm just going to divide them. So you end up with effectively X over A equals Y over B. Now I want to solve for B. Here B is total days worked. Total days worked. So I multiply both sides by A and multiply both sides by B. So if I multiply both sides by A, I get A star X over A equals, am I doing too much here? Have you got this? I don't want to make this too complicated. And then multiply both sides. I did that wrong. Sorry, that's B. I multiply both sides by B, and multiply both sides by A equals Y star A over B. Now, if I just cancel out, I'm making this so difficult. I got it right here, but this is all in English. What do I know about English? Multiply both sides by A, I get the A, yeah. Multiply both sides by A. And then divide both sides. So there's multiplied both sides by A and multiply both sides by B. And now I get the A's cancel out. The A's cancel out, so I get B star X. And then the B's cancel out. Y star A. Yeah. B star X. And then I want to solve for B, so I end up with B, I divide both sides by X, equals Y star A divided by B, by X, excuse me. And that's really what I, believe it or not, this is what I got right here, right? The forecast complete, this is actually the number of days, sorry, it's this one. The total days worked is equal to the days so far times 100%, and that's just 1, divided by today's completion. So in this formula, total days worked equals Y divided by X times 100%, that's just 1. That's just 1. So the A just completely drops out. Total days equal to Y slash X, where Y is the days so far. That's it. And then the forecast complete is start date plus total days Make sense? Okay, so let's calculate that. And like everything else, we're going to calculate it every week so that we have that trend. So this would be forecasted. This is when we expect it to complete, right? And on our config worksheet, we need to know the start date, but we have that. This is the start date. Now, that's the official start date. You're going to get different values. See, this is 1 November, and this is 8 days earlier, 23 October. If I'm not really using that, I think myself, it would be more accurate that the completion date is going to be, the forecast completion will be based on when we really started. And there's the first chunk of work, right? So if I haven't overridden the default, this is the override here, the official start date, but that's the value I'm going to use. And it's a named range called date start. Which one is that? This one? Yeah. Ooh, forecasted completion, yeah? Better. And that is date start plus, what did I say? It's the days so far times divided by today's completion percentage. So days so far is date used. Days so far is date used minus date start. Divided by today's completion, which is that. And remember that Excel stores dates as the number of days since January 1, 1900. So believe it or not, that's a date. Let's format it. May 11 of 2019. So we started. We can just kind of you can kind of check me here and say, okay, here's the config. We started about the end of October, so there's November, December, and we're right now at early February, so there's 90 days into it, right? And we're about half done, right? 52.4%. 50, so we're about half done. So 90 days is about half of it. 180 days is about the whole thing, right? Just very rough guess. That's 6 months from the start. So the start again was end of October. So November, December, January, February. Let's see. Do that again. November 1. So November, December, January, February, March, end of April, which is about what we have, right? Early May. So that seems pretty reasonable. Should be okay. So you can see here that the project started. Our first work was week 43, right? And at that time, right, the denominator is a very small number. So completion is 100 years in the future, 60 years in the future, right? Once we start actually doing some work, the completion starts to get more reasonable. Yeah. Here, it's almost a 1-year project, but then now we actively started making progress, and look how quickly the completion date comes forward. Here's November, there's October, now we're to August, July, right? So now we're starting to stabilize where the work, if we stayed on track, the work is starting to converge on early to mid-May, right? But anyway, all that talk is just, yes, these seem reasonable. These dates seem plausible. So once again, here's the important way, after all that dumb math, and really, it's this part here, the forecast, the completion date. It's how much have we worked so far? Sorry. How much have we worked so far divided by what's our percentage completion? And that's all this is. This formula could probably be simplified, right? Because not that formula, this formula could be simplified because you've got date start in there twice. So it's basically date start I forgot. Yeah, the start date plus how much we've done. So equals the date start. time. Let's try this a different way. My brain doesn't think that well. There's a drawing function here. Yeah, there we go. That's what I want. We're going to insert a big shape here. Okay, it's opaque, and now I'm going to draw. So it's the date start. Well, this is no better at all. I hope you get the math. If you don't get the math, we'll do it with an email. That's just too, I'm wasting too much of your time with this. Clearly, this equation can be simplified, but we'll leave it like it is. And sometimes you want to simplify the equations because it's easier to read them. It's easier to type them in Excel. And if they're complicated equations, it makes them much easier to read than, I mean, this is just kind of talking about it, but we can do better than that. Okay, so this is our forecast date. And just like before, remember the window, right? Here's our window going by. Well, same thing here. Here's a window of the forecast completion, and that data will continue to roll by. We can always look at this window. So let's go to our dashboard and we'll just link to it. And we're just going to link to it because that'll work and it's good enough. And I'm going to format it again. There you go. Probably what would work better here would be bottom wrap text. Okay, there we go. And we'll format that a little bit, make it a white, that alternating background color. So now you can see the trend of forecast completion. And this week, you know, as of the current day, this is the shortest completion date of the whole project. What that means is over time, we're converging on the probable or likely completion date. So what made that kind of easy was we had started out. We already had the start date tracked, right? It's a named range. The most recent date is a named range. And we had already calculated the cumulative completion. Let's check our notes. We've got a little bit more time here. I'm thinking. Yeah, we didn't have to add any synthetic fields to the raw data, and we didn't create a new pivot table. So that really made this pretty easy. What we could also do, it's not directly part of this, but this is the cumulative, how to say this carefully, right? %16 of the project has been done by Abel. 14% has been done by Mario. Mary's done 11. Russell's done 10. When the project is complete, these numbers, none of these numbers will be at 100%. On average, right? On average, since there's 4 responsible, each one is going to do 25% of the project. But if you look at our site lookup, oh, we have a table for that. You can see Abel has 8 sites. Russell only has 4. So Abel should be doing twice as much work. Abel will be doing twice as much work as Russell. And the way I've done this doesn't reflect that. This just, so kind of, so another way to represent this, this would be, but another way would be, it's not a really great way here. This expresses the amount of work of the overall project. But what about Abel? How much of his work is done? So we could do the same thing here. Could we calculate how much work Mario has done? He's done 14% of the project, but how much of the work he has to do has he completed? You understand what I mean? So in the case, if we look at our config again, Mario and Abel have 7 sites. So between the 2 of them, they're more than half of the project, almost. They're 15, sure they are. They're 15 sites just between the 2 of them. Mary and Russell have a lot less work to do than Abel and Mario. How do we calculate that? So we could come back probably to this one. Yeah. I'm thinking. I think this is probably a better way to, maybe not. See, this is where we got the task weight, so it might just be better to do that here. What we're going to have to do is, I didn't practice this one before today's episode, so I'm having to think it up right now. So here, yeah, here we go. Here is the amount of work done. See, this is just the number of sites. It's going to be a lot like this in that we're going to have to, we've partially completed the work. Mario has done part of the work. So what part has he done and how does that factor in? What's this table? Let's look at this pivot table. This is each of the sites. Okay, so I think it's going to be simpler to create a new worksheet and create a pivot table that includes both the site and the responsible by week. Let's try that. Okay, so let's insert a pivot table. All of my pivot tables use the same data set, updates. And I'm going to, oh, wrong one. Year week. And responsible. Can I just sum that? Got to format that because it's really hard for me to read. Oh, we can leave it as 2. Okay, a little easier to read. Yeah, there we go. So what this is working on is the responsible complete. If we go back and look at our updates, I already created this synthetic field, which shows for each site that's assigned to a given responsible, how much has been completed. Yeah, that's what we want. So that basically gives it to us right there. Oh, no, like we did over here, now we have to sum this by week. So I would probably sort this just because it's going to make more sense. And here's our year week, which as always is a link back to our config worksheet. And then this will be this is exactly what we did for overall project completion. Each one of these numbers, I link now to these names. And here's oops. Yeah, extra quote mark there. And because sometimes you're going to get errors, maybe not. Yeah, you can see these ref when the return is nothing, right? When there's no value, you get these errors. So the way to fix that, you'll remember, is wrap it in an if error. Oops. And then show nothing if there's an error. There you go. So that's nicely cleaned up. And we can do this for all of us. And now this is just the sum. It'll make more sense if I do it like this. Oh. Yeah, see, that doesn't work because I anchored the whole thing. I wanted to anchor just the, there we go. I did that wrong. It's only the row that needs to anchor. All this column is doing is summing this column, right? And if this is hard, you could put the two columns side by side. Yeah, there you go. So now, although you can see over here on the dashboard, Abels and Mario have done more work than Mary and Russell, but Russell's farther along because Russell only has 4 sites. Abel has 8, Mario has 7, right? The alternative, if it'll make more sense for you, I mean, that's important. You're the one to be working with this. So this is Abel completion by week. And this would be yeah. So you could interleave the columns. For me, it makes more sense is all of this block is just the completion by week, and all of this block is the cumulative completion by week, how much they've accumulated each week. And this is the part we'll show over here on the dashboard. But it can make more sense for you if you pair them, right? Maybe this looks more sensible because it's right next to the column it's summing up. Back at our dashboard, this is going to be I can just fill it. Here we go. And you can see that Russell's is farther ahead, not because he's done more work, but because he only has 4 sites, whereas Abel has 8, Mario has 7, Mary has 5. There. And maybe this would be a different chart, right? Yeah, this would be an okay chart to represent that. And I'm going to change it. Yeah. Might not be a great way to do this because the numbers, the chart covers itself up. So this area chart, that worked very well because it accumulates, right? Here, it's not going to mean the same thing because each one is going to go to 100%. So in this case, probably a different chart type would make sense. Oops. And this chart is completion moving to the right. This is the latest date over here. This is the latest date on the right. So I need to change this. So format, categories in reverse order. There we go. And we're right at time. So let's do this, chart title. Equals okay, and then on my chart title, there we go. So each one here shows how much that responsible engineer has completed. Oh, we need a legend, format, chart, add, legend. Everybody else is on the top. Okay, so you can see there's Russell. He's there, right? He's got the most completed, right? But because he only has 4 cells, 4 sites. There you go. And although we haven't formally laid this out properly, here's my other, this is the one that I originally created for project completion. And everything you see here updates automatically. And that's the whole point. So simply by adding, where's my updates? Right here. Simply by adding these, each row is really one piece of information. It's a completion, a task completed for one site. That's what every row is here. So for every site, every task, you have one piece of information. So that's why it's really easy to update that. If you're working this, or if you have a team that's working in the sites out in the field, they just need to report when they complete a task, tell you what task they completed, what site number, and when. And then in this workbook, you refresh the pivot tables and your dashboard updates. This whole dashboard updates, all these numbers update automatically. It's really, really simple. We do a bunch of work up front that's not simple to make this simple and easy. But once you've got that work, once you know these techniques, it's really easy to have easily updated, very dynamic, information-rich dashboards. And that's our goal here. That's our goal, is all this data, it's simple to update, day by day, week by week, and you get this rich information set. And I want to make a distinction here. We're all swimming in data. There's more data than we can eat, but we're starved for information. And our job as engineers is to take all that data and pull out the information and present it for our own analysis, or for our boss, or for some other part of the group. But that's our job as engineers. I've seen so many dashboards that all they do is they'll make a chart out of the data. And that's not enough. Our job is to take our knowledge of that data and pull out, synthesize the real information, not just show the data. That's how we add value. For people that don't know how to do that, is we pull out the information and we present that. That's our job as engineers. All right. Any questions, Mario? I will today, since we've gotten quite a ways down the path, I'll upload this workbook. I'll send the workbook out in an email after I upload the video to YouTube. It'll be on my YouTube channel probably later today, and then I'll send out that email. And I hope you can take advantage of it. I hope it helps. But if you got any questions, send me an email or message me on LinkedIn, wherever we get together. I don't know why that's there. I don't know what. Yeah, and blue, always blue. Yeah, that does look pretty nice, doesn't it? I like this one better. The three-dimensional columns, I think, looks better than this one. But it's the same thing. Here it's by region, east, north, south, and west. Whereas here I did it by the responsible engineer. And you could do both if you have a big network, or if you work in the core or in headquarters and you need to do this for a whole network project, you might want to slice it by region. You might want to slice it by responsible in region. If that's your situation, you could do this same dashboard, a separate dashboard for each region. Could do that. And it will be the same, 100% automated. The whole, you could have hundreds of engineers texting or emailing updates, and you just paste them into this workbook, refresh the pivot tables, and it's all done. Don't tell the project managers, because they might not like that. You may not need the project managers. I should say, this isn't really project management. I always call this project tracking, because project management depends on the order and the sequence, and there's dependencies and precedents. That's really project management. Whereas this is, we're just tracking. But often that's enough, for a lot of site-related work, like just a checklist, or preparing for a vendor firmware upgrade, or maybe you're adding a second carrier, or something relatively simple that is just a bunch of boxes to tick. Okay, do it. All right, Mario, thanks a lot. Thanks for being here with me today. I hope this helps. We'll talk to you again. Maybe see you next week. Bye-bye now.